Good morning, Jackie. Really lovely to be speaking with you. So for somebody who hadn't heard of occupational therapy, what is occupational therapy and what does an occupational therapist do?
Okay, well, I think that the easy way of describing it is I always think people can start from understanding what a physiotherapy is,
Yes.
because they get that. And of course, a physiotherapy therapist uses physical exercise to improve a particular piece of body function, don't they? So arm exercises if you're trying to get your shoulder working, for example.
Yeah.
So an occupational therapist does similar, but they use occupation. So they use doing in order to improve function. So while a physio might be doing pure exercises for that shoulder joint, an occupational therapist would find out what's meaningful to the person, because it's really important that they're motivated by having a goal. So for me at the moment, for example, I'm really into bread making. So bread making would be a great activity. I don't know, Paul, but for you, it could be I sound like I'm gender stereotyping here, but it could be that you're into some kind of DIY, and maybe the activity of planing a piece of wood would be part of the therapy. So we're using the occupation of making a bird box or making a loaf of bread to get that shoulder moving and exercising it and improving its function, but through occupation. So it's using meaningful to the person occupation to provide the therapy to improve. And it could be physical function, as in the physio, but we equally do the same for mental health as well. And so we quite often work in the mental health field for the same reasons.
As you know, I've got 3 questions for you today for people on work. So I'll start with our first one, which is, what do you like about your work?
Oh, well, I think the fact that I've worked in the same profession now for about 40 years, which I know not many people do these days, but the reason I've stayed in it all this time is, I suppose there's 2 parts to it, because what I do, I feel makes a difference to people's lives, and actually no 2 days are the same. So even 40 years worth, there's always something that surprises me and something that's different.
Fantastic. And the second question I've got for you, Jackie, is how did you start out?
Well, I started out, actually, when I left school, I really hadn't got any qualifications. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I started off doing clerical work in an office. And I just felt that there should be more to life than that. And one of my jobs was actually, for a period of time, I worked for social security, so helping people to get their money. And I used to go and visit, part of that job was to go out and visit older people. This is in the old days when they used to get grants for things like blankets in the winter, and, you know, sounds quite strange now. But anyway, so I used to go out and visit people, older people, and what I noticed was that a lot of older people were really lonely. Some people lived in lovely, supportive and vibrant surroundings, and some people seemed to just be very alone, even they were in group settings like sheltered housing. So I decided I was going to have a look and see what was around, that perhaps it was time that I had a go at learning to do something. And I found out about occupational therapy from my careers library. I'd never even heard of it before. I was actually on the shelf looking at speech and language and physiotherapy, and there between the two was occupational therapy in the alphabetical order, I suppose. So I got in touch with a local occupational therapy department at the local hospital, which was up in Leeds, where I used to live, and went and visited and saw what they did and thought, oh, this is interesting. And then actually, kind of like a fluke, really, I happened to, I met my husband, boyfriend then, and moved over to Liverpool to be with him. And a fluke, really, I got a job as an occupational therapy assistant in a hospital there. And I was quite shocked, honestly, to be honest. I mean, we are going back to the early 1980s now, and things have moved on hugely and improved in the way that people with dementia are supported. But I was quite shocked at the time people weren't in any way mistreated, but it felt like they were being misunderstood. And I just felt I could wanted to do something to make that difference. But I knew with my lack of qualifications, I wasn't going to get very far. So I actually sent myself off to evening classes to get the required qualifications that I needed, and then applied in Liverpool to the School of Occupational Therapy there, and trained and qualified in 1988, and started work. Well, as an occupational therapist, you begin by starting work by doing what's called rotation, where you go around different types of jobs and have some experience in lots of areas. So I did work in other areas, orthopedics and mental health, psychiatry particularly, but I still was drawn back to wanting to work with people with dementia. So very quickly went into that, and I've been in that field ever since.
Right. Fantastic. And the last question I've got for you, Jackie, this morning is, what would you say to someone starting out today?
Well, I think, and I hope it comes across, that occupational therapy is the best job in the world, honestly. It really is, because it covers so many areas, in that we learn all about what makes us tick, basically. So we learn about mind, body, and social elements, but then we apply that into so many different fields. So you can work from children right through to old age. You can work in healthcare, you can work in social care. I've worked in both. I also have worked in research, in education. I'm a visiting lecturer at one of the local universities. So there's so many opportunities with this profession, that there's something for everybody in it. And it's so fulfilling, because you know that what you're doing is making a real difference to somebody's life in terms of their ability to do what they can do, and to not necessarily, especially in the field of dementia, not necessarily always to get better, as in you're not going to necessarily get better from the condition that's causing you symptoms, but actually to get better from the impact of your symptoms, to be able to do more and be more independent.